UFC Fight Night, Dariush versus Tsarukyan, full card predictions. Starting at the bottom of the card, making my way to the top. As always, first fight we have is Jamie Lynn Horth versus Veronica Hardy. This one's pretty self-explanatory. Um, I understand records don't make a fighter all the time, you know what I mean, especially if they're fighting good competition, if you will. But in this one, you have Jamie Lynn Horth, who's 6-0. The Haley Cohen fight, say what you want, it wasn't the most impressive. Haley Cohen's not the greatest fighter in the world, but it's a win at bantamweight, up a weight class. Now she's fighting at flyweight. I saw the weigh-ins. Um, she's going to be bigger than Veronica Hardy. You know, she looks a lot bigger, a lot stronger. Veronica Hardy's had trouble in the past with bigger, stronger girls. Now she did take some time off, 3 years off, and in her comeback fight against Juliana Miller, she looked really good. She won that fight, pretty much dominated all 3 rounds, but Juliana Miller is not UFC caliber. She's one of the worst fighters I've ever seen, so not you can't take much from a fight like that when it's someone completely terrible um, versus someone that has made some improvements, that has fought decent level of competition before. But regardless, I'm picking Horth to win. I think she does it probably by decision. If I had to guess, I don't think either woman is going to get finished in this fight. I think it's one that does go to the cards, but I got to go with I know also the age thing. Veronica Hardy's 28, so more, I guess you could say, in her prime um, than Jamie Lynn Horth, but I just think the size advantage in a fight like this, a relatively low level fight, I think the size advantage is going to be too much. Give me Jamie Lynn Horth to win. Um, Not that her striking is that great, but in clinching against the cage, even if this fight does hit the mat, I think she is bigger, so she will have an advantage in that department. Moving along, we have Wellington Turman and Jared Gooden. Jared Gooden's terrible. He flails his arm. First of all, he doesn't keep his hands up when he fights. He drops his hands at his side. He doesn't keep his hands up. I don't understand why he fights like that. Wellington Turman, you could see he's been making improvements. He's only 27 years old. Gooden's he's about to be 30, so both guys are young, especially, in this weight class. But um, yeah, I've never been a big fan of Jared Gooden. I think ultimately his striking is not great. He has power, but that's about the only aspect of his game that's really impressive. And I think Wellington Turman, training out of the gym he's at, with guys like Pereira, with guys like Glover coaching him, I think that'll pay a huge amount of dividends in the future. Like, as far as future fights go, like especially this fight, when he's going up against a guy that isn't really necessarily on his level. So I am going to take Wellington Turman. I don't know if he finds a finish here. I wouldn't be surprised, though. Gooden's been knocked out quite a few times. I believe most recently it was against Impa, who, yeah, the most recent knockout loss he had was against Impa, the Carlson Harris loss. Um, he left a lot to be desired in that one. That was just I didn't really like how he looked in that one either. Just really haven't liked how he looks. Wellington Turman, you could say the same. He hasn't looked amazing, 2-3 in his last 5. But, I just feel like Jared Gooden's not, he's another guy that's not UFC caliber. Turman's getting a little bit better. I feel like his striking will be better here. And just overall, I think he will be able to get this one done. Next up, we have a fraud. We have Ihor Pateria, the complete and utter fraud, versus Rodolfo Bellato. I mean, the line's wide, minus 440. It's a little bit excessive in terms of, like, what has he shown to make himself a 4-1 favorite? I think that is a little bit insane, but at the end of the day, Ihor is terrible. Watching him fight is just, it's terrible. Like, he's not a good fighter at all. His record's one of the most padded I've seen ever. Bellato, his 2 losses were they were both actually to Vitor Petrino. Got knocked out twice by Vitor. Those were his only 2 losses, though. Ihor Pateria, his one win in the UFC is against Shogun, who was like 42, and that was his retirement fight. So um, not much to say about that. I am going to go with Bellato. I think it can look very similar to the Negamarianu fight. I think it could look very similar. So in the Nikolai Negamarianu fight, he basically just broke down Ihor Pateria against the cage. I think Bellato can do the same thing in his Contender Series fight. He basically was breaking Tala against the cage, landing like 50 punches in a round. Like I don't know how many punches he landed in the round, but he was throwing a ton of volume. And I think Paterios will crumble under that pressure. So I mean, ultimately, I know the line is really wide, but I understand why slightly because Pateria, he will most likely crumble under any sort of pressure um, that he deals with the entire time. So that's going to be my pick for that. Next is Joe Selecki and Drakkar Close. I actually quite like Joe Selecki. Um, I think he's pretty solid. I think Drakkar Close makes way too many mistakes, which is why I'm picking Joe Selecki here. Selecki, if you look at his last one is last fight's against Carl Deaton. That was pretty dominant. First round, very dominant. Um, got the body triangle standing, so won that relatively easily. As far as just he was just a step ahead in that fight. Sure, you could say Deaton's not nowhere close to the level of Jakar Close, which is I mean, I would agree with that, but Drakkar Close makes too many mistakes. Case in point, Rafa Garcia gets taken down and controlled for like 3 minutes before the ref stands him back up. Before that, Brandon Jenkins beats him. Brandon Jenkins is terrible. Nothing to look into there. Benil Dariush. The problem I'm seeing with Close is the Benil Dariush fight's another good example. Gets backpacked for the whole first round. People remember the second, like the really crazy round that they had where they're both throwing, with a ton of power at each other. But people forget the first round where Dariush just backpacked him and just held him, basically just controlled him for the entire round. Garcia controlled him for parts of their fight. Even before that, Christos Yagos was getting takedowns on him, and Yagos isn't even that great. He was getting takedowns and he was getting control time. And even as far back, I looked at a lot of his fights to kind of see like how he was doing. Even in the Lando Venata fight, he got his back taken and he got taken down by Lando Venata. So getting out grappled and out wrestled by those guys, it's just really bad luck. Especially when you're fighting Joe Selecki. Selecki's he was 5 years younger. Probably not probably. I feel like he's going to be a step ahead in the grappling department, and that's what this fight comes down to for me. I understand why a lot of people are on the Takara Close side, but if you're on the close side, you have to think that this is going to stay standing, and I don't think it's going to stay standing because Close loves to work his way into the clinch. He is a wrestler, like that's his background. Although he's been taken down in almost every single fight he's in, he is a wrestler. So maybe he does slip up and try to shoot a takedown on Selecki. I do think Selecki will get to the dominant positions as he's shown in his career. Younger guy, I feel like he's more in his prime. Close has been coming off of injuries. I think the line's a little bit off. I think Selecki should be a favorite here, just from the way that styles make fights here. So Joe Selecki is my pick for this. Next is Cody Brundage and Zach Reese. Cody Brundage is what really needs to be said about him that people don't already know. The last fight shouldn't have been. It was a DQ win for him. He should have lost, so he should be 8-6 right now. Zach Reese though has been in the cage for a total of, he hasn't been around in his pro career. So how can you really make a determination on how this is going to look after 5 minutes? After 5 minutes, there's no real way of knowing how this is going to look. I have no idea how this is going to look after, if this does go in a second or third round. First round, I could tell you what's going to happen in the first round. Reese is just going to pressure Brundage, force him to make a mistake. I think the odds are that Reese does win in the first round because Brundage is that bad. He's one of the worst I've seen in quite a while, like a long, long time. I know I was talking about some fighters earlier on the card, but this guy he's like the definition of just bad fight IQ. That's really what it is. He actually has a D2 wrestling base, which anyone with any college wrestling base, regardless D1, 2, or 3, um, it's very high level. You know what I mean? It's very tough to do. And the fact that he has a D2 wrestling background and he's pulling guillotine against guys like Rodolfo Vieira, um, pulling guillotine against Dumas and losing, getting out grappled, out wrestled by Dumas, who's a street fighter, not even an actual grappler. It's like just watching it is just sad. It really is. And I think Zach Reese can do the same. Just knock him out, submit him. It doesn't even matter to me. 6-0 versus a guy that I don't think wants to be in there either. So I think this is pretty cut and dry. If Reese doesn't get him out of there early, who knows what will happen in the later rounds. But trusting Cody Brundage is something I'm just not going to do at this point. So I'm picking Zach Reese. We move along to the featured prelim, which is Misha Tate and Julia Avila. This is another one where I don't really understand why Avila's the favorite. Why is she a minus 135 favorite? It doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. Um, Reason being is because Misha Tate has fought the much better level of competition, regardless of they both taken a lot of time off, and Misha Tate took 5 years off since coming back 2 years ago, but Avila, she's taken 2.5 years off. She's fought a lot worse level of competition. I just don't understand why she's the favorite here. I think there has to be some sort of it's just confusing to me. Um, Maybe people are just that low on Tate, but I don't really see how like Avila's even. I just don't understand how she's a favorite really, taking 2.5 years off the sport. So she's less active than Tate. And not only is she less active, she hasn't fought the level of competition. I think that's really what it comes down to for me. Both of them are like older, 35 and 37. They're both not really in their prime anyway. It's not like, Avila is like 29 or 30. So, yeah, I don't think the line should be like this. Going with Misha Tate. And not much else to say about that one. Not really a great fight, in my opinion. Doesn't really do much for the division. But this one, opening up the main card, we have Punahele Soriano taking on Dustin Stoltzfus. Um, Punahele Soriano is going to win. Dustin Stoltzfus is a bad fighter. He's just not really a good fighter at all. He had a fluke win against Pfeiffer on the Contender Series, which is kind of what got him into the UFC in the first place. And then he went 1-4 in his run. His run was 1-4, with his only win being against Dwight Grant, who's really bad, not UFC caliber. Punahele Soriano, his losses, I know the Maximov one was a split. He did not age well, but say what you want, Maximov. He's okay. I mean, he's a grappler, wrestler. It's just a tough fight for Buna. And he also lost to Brendan Allen and Roman Kopylov. Roman Kopylov, very good kickboxer. Just outstruck Punahele Soriano, broke him down. Roman Kopylov would do the same thing to Dustin. And then his other loss was to Brendan Allen. We all know what would happen in a Brendan Allen versus Stoltzfus fight. It wouldn't be competitive in the slightest. So no shame there for Soriano. He's training out of a really good gym, Extreme Couture, one of the best gyms in the sport, as I often mention. And Stoltzfus, his last fight was a year ago. He got front kicked in the face by Abus Magomedov. So he got front kicked, knocked out, and now he's fighting another guy. Might not front kick him in the face, but will definitely hit him with some bombs. Probably knocks him out early, I would imagine. So my guess is going to be first round, Punahele Soriano. I think everywhere the fight goes, he's probably better than Stoltzfus. I know Stoltzfus is a decent, I don't want to say good grappler. He's an okay grappler, but I don't think he's going to be able to just wear down Soriano and submit him or finish him. I think it's going to be very hard for him to do. And I think if anyone finds a finish, it will be Soriano. Next is the legend Clay Guida and Joaquim Silva. I like Silva here. I like Silva. Clay Guida's 40, about to be 42, 42 years old. It's very old for the sport. Um, this is a young man. It's a young man sport, really. Once you get into your 40s, like most people drop off severely. If they, usually at like 35, 35 is usually the cutoff age where athletes start to they start to drop off. Guida's 42, about to be 42. Silva's only, he's about to be 35 himself, but, quite a bit younger than Clay Guida. I just see this being a Silva fight. Guida's been submitted multiple times in the UFC. Silva actually is a pretty good grappler. I think if Guida, um, messes up in a scramble or shoots a bad takedown, I think Silva can absolutely submit him here. I think not only can Silva submit him, he actually has an ability to knock him out. I think Silva has the power to really hurt Clay Guida and possibly get him out of there. I know the main concern with Silva is kind of his lack of a chin. He's been knocked out by, he got beat by Arman Tsarukyan, knocked out by Ricky Glenn and Nasrat Haqparast. So he's been knocked out quite a few times. He's been knocked out on a few occasions. But with that being said, Clay Guida is not really a power puncher. He's not really much of a striker at all. He's just kind of a guy that will just get in your face and fight. Um, and is more of like a pressure wrestler almost. Will shoot takedowns. That's kind of he does have a wrestling background. So I do like Silva here though. I like Silva. Guida just a little bit too old, and I think he's going to retire pretty soon anyway. So that's another kind of um, little tidbit of information that makes me want to pick Silva. So that is the side I'll go in that one. 4 fights left. Um, this one being Sean Brady versus Kelvin Gastelum. I like Kelvin Gastelum here. I do like Kelvin Gastelum to win. Sean Brady, he's an excellent grappler. I've seen him grapple live before, Sean Brady, and he is very good. He's a very good grappler. Great control once he gets on top. He has great control, and he has a great submission grappling. Just he's great in that aspect of MMA. However, I feel like Kelvin is more well rounded. Kelvin is definitely the more well-rounded fighter. He has a wrestling kind of background or base as well. Not that Brady has a wrestling base, more of a grappling base, but Kelvin actually has a wrestling base. Not only does Kelvin have that kind of base, Kelvin's a much better striker. Brady's last fight was standing TKO against Bilal Muhammad. That one it's just not a good look, getting standing TKO'd by Bilal Muhammad, who just doesn't knock people out. And the fact that he got overwhelmed and, finished in that fight makes me worried because Gastelum is a guy who can do the same with probably more, not probably, with more power. So Gastelum can do the same thing as Bilal Muhammad, put on the pressure, up the pace, and he has more power in his hands. So if Brady gets hit by Gastelum, he's probably going to get more hurt than he did with Bilal. Gastelum made weight as well. I know that's in the past he missed weight he missed weight um, more than once at 170, but he made weight this time. He's you know he's training at a fight ready. Another one of the gyms, which I consider definitely a top 5 gym in the sport, in my opinion. So really good gym for Gastelum, better overall skill set, made the weight. I think all he has to do is just keep this fight on the feet. I think his striking is miles ahead of Brady's. I think it's not even really competitive on the feet. I think if Brady gets this to the ground, if Brady can take him down, I think Kelvin is a little bit compromised there because Brady's, he definitely is the better grappler. But if Kelvin keeps this on the feet, I think this is his fight to lose. And after the Bilal Muhammad fight, it's hard to pick Brady. So I'm going to go with Gastelum. The featured fight is Rob Font and Davison Figueiredo. Contrary to what many are picking, I'm actually going the opposite way. I'm picking Davison Figueiredo, and I'll tell you guys kind of why I have that opinion. So Font in his last fight, that was kind of the fight that made me think, okay, Corey Sandhagen, I know Corey's very well rounded. He does have an ability to outstrike Font. I think Corey could have outstruck him if he wasn't injured. But the fact that an injured Sanhagen was able to out wrestle and out grapple Rob Font for 5 straight rounds makes me think that in a 3 round fight, Davison Figueiredo, who, you know, is training on Fight Ready for this camp with Cejudo, getting in a lot of work with Henry as far as the wrestling. I know he's going to probably come out wrestling in this fight. I think Figueiredo has a better chance to win than people are giving him credit for. He's an underdog here. I don't know if that line's accurate. If Figueiredo wrestles, if he can actually take Font down and control him, which is easier said than done, but I do think he will be able to get him, at least get him to the ground. Just the threat of the takedown will make Font kind of second guess himself. And Figueiredo has a lot of power. Now, will the power translate up a weight class? That is to be determined. It's to be determined because we haven't seen Figueiredo at this new weight class yet. This is his first fight at bantamweight. But my opinion is Rob Font, he's been dropped before. He's been hurt badly. Um, in his fight against Marlon Vera, Cheeto, he got beat up really, really badly. Took a lifetime of damage in that one. Got dropped a few times by Aldo as well. I just think his chin isn't the best either. So people are talking about Figueiredo, and he might get dropped, knocked out here. I don't think Font's chin's the best either. So if Figueiredo can land like a big overhand right on him, I think it could drop Font, really hurt him. And I do think the wrestling favors Figueiredo as well. Especially training with Henry at Fight Ready. So just for that aspect alone, I am going to go with Figueiredo. If Figueiredo was the favorite, maybe I'd be more inclined to pick Font, but I feel like this is a decent underdog. You're making the former champion, a champion of the world, who's the younger guy. I know he's going up a weight class, but younger guy, former champion, has has an ability to wrestle. Um, Black belt in jiu-jitsu as well, so he can grapple here. So I'm gonna roll with him as on the dog here. So give me Figueiredo. Co-main event is Jalen Turner versus Bobby Green. This was supposed to be the Dan Hooker versus Bobby Green fight. Obviously, Dan Hooker got injured, so it is Jalen Turner now. I think Jalen Turner wins. I've also been seeing a lot of love on the Bobby Green side this week. I've been seeing a lot of love on the Bobby Green side this week, but in my opinion, Jalen Turner is, we know he's the younger, 28 to 37, right? That is something you have to look at. Much younger guy in his prime. I know his record isn't the best, 13-7, but his record, the reason his record is the way it is because he's fought really good competition at a young age. Vicente Luque, first fight in the UFC. At the age of 23, he fights Vicente Luque, up a weight class, gets knocked out in the first round. His losses are also to Matt Frevola. Matt Frevola, that was in 2019 when he was 23, and Matt Frevola was 28. We know how good Frevola is. Even with the Benoit Saint Denis loss, Frevola is still a really good fighter. And then he goes on a 5-fight win streak over good competition. Coley Bow's a good fighter. Brock Weaver's decent. Uros Medic, solid fighter. Jamie Malarkey and Brad Riddell, not like top 15 level guys, but solid competition. And then he loses a split to Gamrot in a fight where Gamrot pushes the wrestling, and then he loses to Dan Hooker in a fight where he was winning the first round pretty clearly, and then Dan Hooker picked it up and won a decision. I think against Bobby Green, I think Jalen Turner is just going to be too quick. I think he's going to find a finish against Bobby Green. Bobby's I just think he's a little bit too old. I think he's a little bit too old for a guy as big as Jalen Turner. Turner also made weight for this one. He's 6'3", really long reach, much bigger, way, way bigger, way bigger. more power, and I think kind of all of even the grappling. I think Turner, has a chance of submitting Bobby Green, maybe rocks him, drops him, and then jumps on the neck. That could happen. We've seen that happen with Turner before. I just think he's starting to, kind of come into his prime a little bit. He's taken two close losses. He's going to be, more focused on not gassing out too early, kind of just maintaining a pace throughout the whole fight. And, even if he doesn't knock out Bobby Green, even if he doesn't finish him in the first round, I think he probably could win a close, 29-28 decision. So the line is minus 200. I would tend to agree with that. I don't think it's really disrespecting Bobby Green. It is a close line, relatively close, because I do think Turner deserves to be favorite. I wouldn't say like minus 400 level, but minus 200 seems about accurate. So I'm picking Jalen Turner. Lastly, it is Beneil Dariush and Arman Tsarukyan. Now, this is one where I was originally planning on going with Dariush. I was thinking at first I might go with Dariush. I feel like Dariush is underrated. He's a big underdog. I don't understand. But then I kind of looked back into his fights and I realized, like, okay, there's a reason why he's an underdog in this fight. And it's because, one, his strike, I don't think he's going to be able to out wrestle Arman Tsarukyan. I think the grappling probably cancels out. So if you're telling me this is a pure striking fight, I think Armin's a better striker. I think he's a better striker. I think Beneil Dariush has a lot of power, and he does have an ability to like not drop people or knock them out. But I just think his technical ability isn't on the level of Tsarukyan. I think Tsarukyan, he's training out of ATT now. So that's another, like, I keep talking about good gyms. I mean, Extreme Couture, Fight Ready, American Top Team, Kill Clip, like all these gyms are, all really, really good, So great training partners, great gym, 27 years old. So not even in his physical prime yet. He's still improving fight after fight. I think Dariush is starting, I think the decline's coming. I hate to say it because I do like the guy. I do think he's entertaining. I think he's, really good in there. But I think the decline will start to come soon. Um, I like Arman Tsarukyan. I don't, I think Dariush will I also see, in a 5 round fight, I feel like as the rounds go on, he'll start to tire out. He'll start to get a little bit tired, and Arman will start to take over. So calling a finish is going to be a little bit tough. I don't know if Arman Tsarukyan's going to be able to finish Beno Dariush. I do think there is a possibility for it, though. And if Arman Tsarukyan, if he is able to knock out Dariush or submit him, I don't know about submit him, but if he is able to like knock him out or kind of like, wear him down and finish him in the later rounds, I think he's right in line for like a number one contender fight or even a title fight if the cards line up correctly. So yeah, I like Arman Tsarukyan. After kind of watching these guys a little bit more, the Gamrot fight, he should have won. Arman Tsarukyan should be 21-2, and then his only loss in the UFC, in my opinion, because I believe he won the Gamrot fight. His only loss in the UFC should have been the Islam fight. He took it at 22 years old on short notice and gave Islam a very competitive, fight. Not the most competitive fight. The most competitive fight with Islam was the first Volk fight, but he definitely on short notice, gave a good account of himself against one of the best, not one of the best fighter in the weight class by far at this point. So yeah, I like Arman Tsarukyan here, and that rounds out the card for UFC Austin. UFC Fight Night, Dariush versus Tsarukyan. Thank you guys for tuning into this one, and I will see you in the next one.